the night Adiz Akafer almost died, was the same night she found the man she would spend the rest of her life fighting not to love. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday, the kind of Lagos night that smelled like exhaust fumes, suya smoke, and the particular brand of broken dreams that only this city knows how to manufacture. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at Glamour Threads boutique on Lagos Island, 12 hours of smiling at customers who touched everything and bought nothing, of rearranging racks Madame Caro would rearrange again the next morning, of standing in shoes that were never designed for standing. Her feet were burning inside her fake Laubautins. Her phone battery was at 4%, and she had exactly 1,200 naira in her wallet, which was not enough for anything meaningful in Lagos on a Thursday night. The BRT had gone, the last one. She had watched it pull away from the stop like a betrayal while she was still 50 meters away, half-running, her boutique bag swinging. The Uber app showed a surge 3,200 naira. She closed the app, opened it again in case it had changed. It had not changed. She closed it. The rain was beginning to threaten from the dark horizon, rolling in from the lagoon the way it always did, slowly, with complete indifference to personal inconvenience. She stood at the bus stop and did the mental arithmetic she had done so many times it came automatically now. If she took Uber, she would not eat tomorrow morning. If she waited for a private bus, she could be there until midnight. If she walked even part of the way, her shoes would destroy her completely, and she had a display arrangement to do at 8 a.m. She was standing in the arithmetic of poverty, adding numbers that refused to come out right, when a lone Okada slowed beside her. "Oga, you dey go mushin," she called out, already walking toward him before he answered. Because in Lagos you did not wait for confirmation before moving, waiting was a luxury. The rider turned to face her. Even in the yellow haze of the streetlight, broken and buzzing as it was, she noticed things about him that did not quite add up. His hands on the handlebar were smooth, not the roughened, weather-darkened hands of a man who spent his days gripping metal in Lagos traffic. His jacket, though deliberately plain, sat on his shoulders with a precision that suggested it had been chosen, not grabbed. And his eyes, dark, still, intelligent, regarded her with a quality of attention that felt less like a rider sizing up a passenger, and more like someone genuinely curious about what she would say next. "I dey go that side," he said. His voice was low, measured, unhurried in a way that Lagos rarely allowed. "Hop on." "How much?" 300. She did not even blink. "Oga abeg, 200, it is night, the road is free, 200. He looked at her just a moment, the briefest assessment. Then he nodded once, the smallest inclination of his helmeted head. "Enter." She climbed on, adjusted her bag, and they moved into the Lagos night. The road was relatively clear. The city breathed around them, generator hum, distant music, the smell of drains and frying plantain, the specific Lagos combination that people who have never lived there cannot imagine, and people who have lived there cannot fully leave behind even when they go. Neither of them spoke for the first few minutes. Neither of them knew yet that fate, dressed in a plain helmet and a borrowed jacket, had just collected them both. His name was Emeka Okonkwo, 32 years old, CEO of Eco Holdings, one of the most consequential real estate and logistics conglomerates in Nigeria, with active offices in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kano, and a headquarters building in Victoria Island that bore his family name in letters of brushed gold above the entrance. Forbes Africa had written about him twice. Business Day ran his photo in their quarterly power list. He had shaken hands with 2 state governors and 1 federal minister in the same month without it being considered unusual. He had a penthouse apartment with an unobstructed view of the Atlantic that cost more per month than most Nigerians would earn in 3 years, and he sat in it some evenings and felt, in the particular silence that extreme wealth can produce, profoundly alone. What 6 years of building an empire had taken from him, quietly, efficiently, the way compound interest takes, was the simple experience of being known, not feared, not admired, not leveraged, known. He could not remember the last time someone had looked at him and thought, "This is just a man." Every relationship at his level came preloaded with calculation, even the casual ones, even the ones that dressed themselves as friendship. His ex-fiancée, Chisholm, had completed the work that years of corporate life had begun. She was beautiful in the way that certain women are beautiful, precisely, deliberately, for strategic effect. She had seemed genuine for 8 months, which was long enough for him to lower his guard completely, to show her things he showed nobody, to speak about fears that a CEO was not supposed to have. He found out the truth in the worst possible way. His legal team flagged it: confidential investment documents, internal acquisition plans, forwarded from her personal email to a competitor's director 3 days before a deal that should have been his fell apart. She had cried when confronted. She had told him he was paranoid. She had cried harder when his lawyers arrived with the non-disclosure agreement. After she left, he had sat in his Victoria Island penthouse and watched the Atlantic for a long time. And then he had called his personal assistant Kelechi and said, in the tone he used for decisions already made, "I need a flat in a normal neighborhood. I need a second-hand motorcycle. I need 6 weeks." Kelechi had opened and closed his mouth twice before professional loyalty won. Within a week, Emeka Okonkwo had moved into a 2-room flat in Mushin, bought a used Okada with cash from a man who asked no questions, and begun learning the geography of ordinary Lagos with the same complete attention he gave to quarterly earnings reports. He had not expected her. He had not expected to find himself, on his 9th day, slowing at a bus stop for a woman in fake designer shoes who negotiated the price of a 300 ride down by 100 naira with the confident precision of someone who had been doing it their whole life and saw no reason to be embarrassed about it. If you are new here, this is the channel where love stories hit different. Subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Now let us continue, because it is only just beginning. Adiz Nkecha Okafor was 27, the second of 4 children from an Enugu family that had come to Lagos when she was 9 years old, following work the way Lagos families do, pragmatically and without sentiment. She had a diploma in fashion design from a polytechnic in Yaba, a Saturday side hustle selling carefully curated thrift pieces on Instagram under the handle at Ada Threads, and a personality her mother described, always with a mixture of pride and exasperation, as too much mouth for one woman. She was not beautiful in the conventional Lagos way that demanded effort and maintenance. She was striking, the kind of face that took a moment to register and then refused to leave your memory. She had the habit of speaking her mind at full volume and apologizing for none of it, which had cost her certain opportunities over the years, and which she had decided she was not willing to change. She was not looking for love. She had tried love twice and found it wanting. The first time, a man named Datan had borrowed 45,000 naira across 7 months and relocated to Canada to settle first before sending for her. She was still waiting. The second time, a man named Segun had been gentle and attentive for 4 months and then shown her another face entirely, one she had not been warned about and would not forget. She had picked herself up from that one with the methodical efficiency of someone who had decided that the only reliable investment was in herself. Her plan was clear: save 300,000 naira, register her fashion label legally, rent a small workspace in Surulere, and build something with her own hands that could not pack its bags and leave. Men were not in the plan. Men were a detour she could not afford. And yet she kept seeing him. He was there at the bus stop the next morning, and the morning after. She told herself it was his route. Of course it was. Okada riders had zones. She was simply a repeat customer. It meant nothing. But she began to notice the way he slowed for speed bumps before she tensed for them, as if he had learned already that she was the kind of passenger who did not like surprises. She noticed that he never played music loud enough to prevent conversation. She noticed that when she was tired, and she was often tired, he did not try to fill the silence, which was an unusual restraint in Lagos, where silence made people anxious. He returned her forgotten phone one Tuesday evening, He rode 40 minutes out of his way to bring it to her gate. She stood there looking at him in the orange-tinted evening light and had a feeling she did not immediately name. "You came back," she said. "It is your phone," he said, simply, as if there were no other possible response to the situation. She did not sleep well that night, and she was annoyed about it. The first real conversation happened 12 days later. The sky was doing that thing Lagos skis occasionally did, clearing, turning a soft amber, pretending to be peaceful. She had left the boutique early, her mood was good for no specific reason, and she said, without planning to, "You don't talk like someone who has been doing this long." In the mirror, she saw something flicker in his eyes. What does someone who has been doing this long sound like? "I don't know, different, harder, like the city has got into them already." "Maybe the city got into me earlier than this job." "That is not an answer." "No," he agreed mildly, "it is not." She found herself smiling without intending to. "What did you do before this?" He paused just a half-second too long. "Business," he said. "What kind?" "The kind that stopped feeling real." She turned this over. "So you left." "I took a break," he said, "to remember what real felt like." She thought about that for the rest of the ride and long after she had gone inside and started her evening. She thought it was the most unexpectedly honest thing a man had said to her in years. She also thought that a man who rides Okada in Lagos to remember what real feels like was either profoundly wise or had some problem she had not identified yet. In her experience, these were not mutually exclusive. She began talking to him in earnest after that. She told him about the fashion label, not in the careful, abbreviated way she told most people, expecting dismissal, but in full. The Ankara fusion concept. The ready-to-wear line she had been sketching since her final year at Polytechnic. The specific problem she wanted to solve, beautiful, African-forward clothing at prices that did not require a wealthy husband. He listened with the full quality of his attention, asking questions that showed he had been paying attention to everything before, not just the current sentence. He asked about supply chains. He asked about her target market. He asked whether she had looked at the cost of a legally registered business name. He was not mansplaining, he was curious. There was a difference she had learned to feel. She told him about her mother's arthritis, which had been getting slowly worse, and which meant her mother could no longer take the kind of market work that had supplemented the family income for years. She told him about her younger brother Emeka. She paused when she said the name, looked at the rider, and moved on quickly, who had failed jam the first time and was grinding through the second attempt with the specific desperation of someone who understood exactly what failure would mean. She told him about the way Lagos extracted rent from you every day in ways that went beyond money, in time, in energy, in the particular erosion of constantly navigating a city that was not designed for your comfort. He listened. He did not try to fix. He did not say, "at least." He did not say, "have you tried?" He simply received what she said and reflected it back to her through his questions and his silences and the occasional comment that showed he had genuinely understood. She was in trouble, and she knew it, and she chose, for a while, not to do anything about it. If you are still watching, I need you to drop a comment right now and tell me, did you notice the clues? Because Adiz was starting to. We are halfway through and the revelation is coming. Make sure you have subscribed so you never miss a story on this channel. Let us continue. It was her neighbor Ngozi who forced the issue. Ngozi worked in a bank and had what she called customer instincts, which meant she noticed things and considered it her responsibility to report them. She sat across from Adiz in their shared compound on a Sunday evening, the kind of evening that Lagos occasionally permitted slow, warm mango juice from the woman on the next street, a brief forgetting that anything was urgent. Adiz, Ngozi's voice had the particular flatness of someone delivering a finding. That Okada man, something is not correct. Ngozi, please, leave that matter. I am not joking. Caraway Cell Provision said she noticed it too. His phone, Adiz, I saw his phone once when he was waiting outside your gate. It was one of those phones they keep in a glass case at the front of the phone shop. The ones with no price tag because the price tag would cause commotion. You are exaggerating. His watch, Ngozi continued, undeterred. The day it rained and his sleeve got wet, I saw the watch. I have seen that exact watch model in a magazine in the salon. It costs more than what this compound charges for annual rent. Adiz was quiet. And his hands, Ngozi said. I shook the man's hand once, remember, when he helped carry Mama Tobai's gas cylinder that afternoon. Adiz, his hands are soft. I have shaken the hands of men who work physically. That man does not work physically. Those are office hands. Adiz was still quiet. Ngozi leaned forward. What do you know that you are not telling me? Nothing, Adiz said, which was technically true. She did not know anything. She had filed things away, the precise English that surfaced occasionally when he forgot to manage it, the reference to interest rates on commercial property, made with the casual fluency of someone who thought about it professionally, the laptop visible through his open flat door one morning that looked significantly more expensive than the flat itself deserved. She had filed all of these things and not opened the drawer. She opened it that night. She sat on her bed with her phone, screen at full brightness, and typed his name. Emeka Okonkwo Lagos. The internet answered immediately. Forbes Africa, Business Day, Channels TV, Vanguard, The Guardian Nigeria, his face, clean, unsmiling, suited, standing in a glass building under his family name, looked back at her from the top of the search results. CEO, 32, Eco Holdings, one of the youngest billionaires in West African real estate. Bachelor, notably private about his personal life since a broken engagement 18 months prior. She read 3 articles. She put the phone face down on the mattress. She picked it up and read 2 more. She put it down again. She sat completely still for 4 minutes, which was extraordinary because Adiz Okafor was constitutionally incapable of stillness. And then the anger arrived, clean and certain and not at all hysterical. Not because he was rich. She was poor, not stupid. She had no problem with his wealth existing. She was angry because she had been fooled in the specific way she had sworn after Datan and after Segun that she would never be fooled again. She had been performing honesty, her real life, her real worries, her real dreams, to someone who was performing poverty. She had been vulnerable to a lie, and she could not tolerate that. Vulnerability was something she rationed very carefully, and she had spent some on him without knowing the exchange rate. She did not take his Okada the next morning. She took a bus. It was crowded and hot and took 40 minutes longer. She stood in the boutique arranging the new stock and felt the anger sitting in her chest like something that needed digesting. On the 3rd day of absence, he came to the gate. Adiz. She had known he would come. She opened the gate with the composure of someone who had rehearsed. So your name is Emeka Okonkwo, she said. He did not look away, did not perform surprise. Yes. CEO of Eco Holdings, the building in VI with the gold letters. Yes. And you have been what exactly? Riding Okada through Mushin for what reason? Cultural research. A bet. Because I need you to help me understand what kind of man with that kind of money rides a second-hand motorcycle and collects 200 for rides. A man, he said carefully, whose last serious relationship ended because the woman was in love with the money and never bothered to find the man behind it. A man who needed to know, genuinely needed to know, whether connection was still possible when the context was removed. So you removed the context by lying. By not introducing myself with my net worth, yes. Looked at him steadily. That is a convenient way to say it, the polite version, the version where you are the protagonist making a brave choice, but let me tell you the other version. Her voice remained even. That was the thing about Adiz in genuine anger, she did not raise it. In the other version, you had the luxury of choosing to be ordinary. I did not choose it. I wake up ordinary every single day. When I tell you about my mother's rent problem, that is not a story, that is my Tuesday. When I talk about saving up slowly for my label, that is not a charming anecdote about ambition. That is the actual architecture of my life. I gave you real things, and you gave me a costume." He said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "You are right. I cannot argue with any of that." "I know," she said. "Good morning, Emeka Okonkwo." She stepped back and closed the gate. She went inside and stood against the back of the gate with her palms flat on the cool metal, breathing. She was not going to cry. She was absolutely, categorically not going to cry over a man she had known for 6 weeks, regardless of the fact that those 6 weeks had been the most genuinely seen she had felt in years. She had made a rule about this. The rule was clear. She broke the rule, briefly, and then she washed her face with cold water, put powder on, and went to work. Lagos did not pause. Lagos never paused. 2 weeks passed. Her brother got his jam results. He had passed. She got a small performance bonus at the boutique, 30,000 naira. She started sketching again in the evenings, filling pages with cuts and fabric combinations and the Ankara fusion vision that she had been putting aside in favor of survival. The notebook got thicker. She almost felt normal. Then her mother called. Her father's provisions shop in Mushin, the shop that had fed them since they arrived in Lagos, that had paid school fees and medical bills and kept the family structurally intact through years of difficulty, was facing a rent increase. The landlord wanted 450,000 naira before the end of the month. Not a negotiation, a demand, with a deadline. Adiz sat down when she heard the number. She ran every calculation she knew how to run. Her savings, 62,000. Her bonus, 30. A cooperative loan would take 3 weeks to process. They did not have 3 weeks. Her older sister was already stretched with her own family. Her aunties had the will but not the means. Her madam at the boutique gave her 50,000 more and a look of deep sympathy and said it was all she could manage. She sat in her room on a Saturday night with a notebook full of numbers that refused to add up, and she felt the weight of a family resting on her calculations. And she did not cry because crying would not produce 450,000 naira, and she was a practical woman. She did not call Emeka. This was a firm decision. She had pride, not the foolish kind that refused help from friends and then collapsed, but the specific, load-bearing kind that understood the difference between accepting help and becoming a project. She would not be his project. She would not be the thing a rich man fixed to feel generous. She had more self-respect than that. She did not call him. He came anyway. He was at her gate Sunday morning when she opened it, not on the Okada, not in anything that announced itself. Plain shirt, plain jeans, and a small cooler from the suya and pepper soup spot on Agege Road. The one she had mentioned exactly once, in passing, weeks ago, that it reminded her of her mother's cooking. She stared at the cooler for a long moment. "Ngozi told me about the shop," he said before she could speak. "Ngozi," Adiz said with feeling, "has a very big mouth. She is worried about you. She was trying to help." "I did not ask anyone for help." "I know that." He set the cooler down on the ground between them, not pushing it toward her, just placing it as a fact. "I am not here to write a check and have you thank me. I know you and I know that is not how this works. I am here because—" He stopped, and something in his face shifted, a careful guard lowering, the way she had seen it happen once or twice during rides and always thought she imagined it. "Because I have spent 2 weeks in that flat thinking about someone I should have been honest with, and I am exhausted from protecting myself from the very thing I came here looking for." Adiz looked at him. She looked at the cooler. She looked at the morning light falling across her compound gate, and she thought about all the very good reasons this was a bad idea, and she thought about his voice on all those rides saying things that nobody had said to her before, and she thought about the fact that she was standing here angry and grieving at the same time, which was a combination she had not expected to feel about a man who sold Okada rides. "The pepper soup," she said finally, "better be exactly the right temperature." "I kept it warm," he said. She stepped back from the gate. He picked up the cooler and walked in. It was not simple. Nothing real ever is, and they were real people in a real city with real complications that money alone could not dissolve. His mother, Chief Mrs. Adago Okonkwo, was a woman who wore her social position the way other women wore perfume, applied carefully every morning and never left the house without it. She received the news of Adiz with the silence of someone running a calculation whose results she had already decided. The aunties followed. The family dinners began, the kind that were technically welcoming but structurally designed to communicate inadequacy, where the questions sounded like getting to know you and functioned as cataloging. Where are your people from exactly? What does your father do? Where did you go to university? Adiz sat at those tables with her back perfectly straight, eating what was offered, answering what was asked, and refusing to perform smallness for anyone's comfort. After one Sunday that had been particularly pointed, in the car on the way back, Emeka reached over and took her hand without speaking. She let him hold it for a long moment before she said, "I need to know that when it actually matters, you will choose correctly." "I already have," he said. She turned to look at him. His face was calm and certain in a way she had come to recognize as genuine. This was how he looked when he was not performing anything. "Okay," she said quietly, and turned back to the road. Her father's shop was saved, not by a check, which she would not have accepted, but through a negotiation Emeka conducted with the landlord using entirely legitimate channels and a legal argument about notice periods that bought them 6 additional months, and a payment structure her family could manage. He told her what he had done only after it was done. She was quiet for a long time when he told her. "You should have asked me first," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "I should have. I am sorry. Do not do things for my family without telling me." "I will not again." She believed him. She had learned that when he said something plainly without defending it, he meant it. The sketchbook conversation happened 4 months after the pepper soup morning. She had left it on his kitchen table during a visit. She had started visiting properly by then, learning the small flat that had become stranger and stranger to her as she understood who he actually was, yet more familiar because she had come to know him here rather than in the building with the gold letters. He looked at the pages she left open. She snatched it back faster than she had meant to. "Show me," he said, 2 weeks later across her own kitchen table. "Why?" "Because you protect it the way people protect things they believe can still be taken from them. Show me so it is real between us." She showed him every page. She talked for 40 minutes fabric sourcing, the Ankara fusion concept, the pricing model that would make it accessible, the market she had identified. He asked questions for 20 minutes after that. At the end he sat back and said simply, "How much do you need to start?" She opened her mouth. "Not a gift," he said, reading her. "An investment. I evaluate businesses and I invest in them. This is a business. You have a clear concept, an identified market, and the specific obsession that makes founders succeed. I am asking to invest. You bring the plan, I bring capital. We negotiate terms like adults." She stared at him. This man who had arrived in her life as a 200 naira lie and had refused, steadily, stubbornly, to be anything less than honest since the gate that morning. This man who understood without being told that the worst thing he could offer her was rescue, because she was not a woman who needed rescuing. She was a woman who needed room. "You are a genuinely strange person," she said. "You are the only person who says that like it might be a good thing," he replied. "It might be," she said. Ada Collections launched 8 months later. A small flagship store in Surulere, rented legitimately, stocked from a supply chain she had negotiated herself. With investment capital dispersed according to the agreement she and Emeka had signed in his actual office with his actual lawyers, which had taken 3 meetings and one significant argument about equity percentages that she won. The Ankara Fusion ready-to-wear line launched with an Instagram campaign that cost almost nothing and worked, because the pieces were genuinely beautiful, and she had an eye that showed. The first run sold out in 11 days. She stood in the store on opening day in a deep green wrap dress she had made herself, every stitch her own, her mother crying by the entrance with the quiet dignity of a woman who had waited a long time to see something she always knew was coming. Her brother moved through the crowd taking photos for every platform he could think of, narrating to his phone like a man covering a major event, which he was. Her father stood near the back with his hands folded and looked around the room slowly, the way he looked at things he wanted to carry with him. Emeka arrived late. A board meeting had run over, he had warned her it might. He came in without announcement, in plain clothes that made him indistinguishable from any other guest except to anyone who looked carefully. She was across the room when he walked in. The crowd was still thick. He stood at the edge of it and found her eyes the way people who know each other well can do across any distance. She watched him make his way through the guests. When he reached her, he bent slightly toward her ear and said, low enough to be only for her, "This is exactly what it was always going to be." "How could you have known that?" she asked. "Because from the first night at that bus stop, everything you said was building toward exactly this. I just paid attention." She looked at him. "You know," she said, "for a man who started our relationship with a lie, you have turned out to be a surprisingly honest person." "I had a good reason to change," he said. She did not look away. "You did," she said simply. "You actually did." Outside, Lagos was doing what Lagos does, living at full volume, indifferent, magnificent, maddening, and utterly unstoppable. Okadas threaded through traffic. Hawkers moved between cars. Somewhere a generator started up with the conviction of something that had been waiting for its moment. The city did not pause for love or for launches or for the particular quiet revolution of a woman standing in a room she had built. But Adiz Akafor, who had stood at a bus stop 11 months ago with 4% battery and 1,200 naira and no plan except survival, stood in the store that bore her name in brass letters above the door, and looked at the man who had arrived in her life as a 200 Okada ride and stayed as something she was still finding language for. And she thought, sometimes the road does not take you where you thought you were going. Sometimes it takes you exactly where you needed to arrive. She had been trying to get home that Thursday night. She had gotten here instead. And this, all of this, had been the real destination all along. If this story moved you, and I know it did, please like this video right now. A single tap tells the algorithm that this story deserves to be seen by more people, and it costs you nothing. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. This channel is where stories live that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Drop a comment below and tell me your single favorite moment from this story. Was it the first ride? The gate confrontation? The pepper soup morning? Tell me. And come back for the next one, because the next story